I've gotten so many hateful comments, and I'm thinking, how is it that these people who seem to be so scientifically minded, and how can they be so hateful about this? And they never give any actual evidence one way or the other. They just say, you're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid. Well, I may be, but that doesn't mean the case is. And so my point is, can't we just talk about this? Hey, welcome to Church for Skeptics. I'm going to start this session with reading you some scripture here, Psalm 19, and you'll see why. I'm going to read, this is from the ESV. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims His handiwork. Day to day pours out speech. In other words, the creation, the universe, pours out speech. It's talking about God, so to speak. And night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, and nor are there words whose voice is not heard. It points to Romans 1, where it says, without excuse, to know that there's a God that exists because of His creation, because of what He's done. It's obvious that God exists because of His creation. Then it says, their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. So there's no culture that isn't accountable for that knowledge. In them He has set a tent for the sun, which comes out like a bridegroom leaving his chamber, and like a strong man runs its course with joy. It's rising from the end of the heavens. I know they're going to say the sun doesn't rise, and it's scientific and all that. So it's the way we view things, of course. We look at sunrises and sunsets. We know the world's turning, and you know. So it's rising, in verse 6 again, its rising is from the end of heavens, and the circuit to the end of them. There is nothing hidden from its heat, that we know. The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. And there are several verses after that. I'll stop with verse 7. I'm starting, and I realize that, we've gotten, of course, we're going to get comments when we start messing with science and scientists. I'm not anti-science at all. I think it's a great gift of God, and it has provided, the good science has provided us with so many good things, and I think God's just allowed us to see those things. My big point of all of these is this: in the last 100 years, and we'll talk about why 100 years, in the last 100 years, I think God has given us, through science especially, because science has been perceived to be the enemy of God's existence, I think God has poured it on from science that His existence is real. Day unto day, night unto night, knowledge is given. And it's been given through science. Now, obviously before the 1800s and before the 1900s, people knew there was a God. As a matter of fact, maybe they knew it better than we do now. But God has poured it on in the last 100 years because of science, number one. And then the second thing, which we'll go to later, is archaeology. In other words, God has given us a lot of discoveries in the last 100 years. We'll talk about some of those at the end, but I want to start with the idea that that's the big picture. In the last 100 years, God has revealed Himself even more so. Why has He done that? Just being generous and merciful, I think. Maybe it's because we think God's coming back soon. I wouldn't pursue that too much, but it could be. In the last 100 years, we're going to say, this is 2025, this is also the anniversary of a very famous trial in Dayton, Tennessee. I'm sure you know about this, what we call the Scopes Monkey Trial. Now, I want you to think about this. And so this is kind of the reason for this, or at least it's the immediate reason for this, all this series here. In 1925, it was against the law in Dayton, Tennessee. I can't imagine those days. It was against the law in Dayton, Tennessee to teach evolution in schools. Now, that assumes several things here. And, I think you could be an evolutionist and still believe in God. I think many do. They call it theistic evolution. I don't think that's credible, and I don't think it's true, and I don't think it's scientifically necessary. That's the big point here. But Richard Dawkins said that Darwin's greatest contribution, now think about it, this is more important than evolution. This is more important. Of course, he did it through evolution. In other words, Darwin's contribution is even greater than his science, and that was to make atheism credible. And that's what Richard Dawkins says, who's of course a biologist and an atheist, staunch atheist. And so he says that's Darwin's greatest credential, his greatest help to all of us is that it makes atheism reasonable, credible, intellectually satisfying, is what he said. Now, think about that. Think about that for a minute. That means that before the theory of evolution, Darwinian evolution, obviously evolution just means change, so that you can have some and not others. But the point is here, before the theory of natural selection and mutations and common descent, where everything has evolved slowly over millions of years of time, or billions, then it wasn't credible, it wasn't feasible, it wasn't intellectually satisfying to disbelieve in God. Why is that? Psalm 19, it's right here, that the universe declares the existence of God. Day unto day utters speech, night unto night unto knowledge, so that there is nobody that's not with it. There's nobody that didn't get that memo from the universe itself. So it took Darwin to make atheism intellectually satisfying. That means before Darwin, atheism was not intellectually satisfying. Let me add something else to that. Richard Dawkins has said that the business of science then, and of course you can join these together, the business of science then is to show that what appears to be designed for a purpose is not actually designed for a purpose. That's the whole deal of science now. That's what science is supposed to do, to disbelieve the existence of God. It's almost like that. Are you kidding me? That's the purpose of science, is to disbelieve the existence of God? But only after Darwinian evolution came to be the consensus view. So all this has to do with the Scopes trial, of course, in which case in 1925 was against the law to teach evolution. The prosecutor won that court trial, and so Mr. Scopes, John Scopes, was the biology teacher who presumably was teaching evolution. He really hadn't been, but he was corralled to do that. A lot of difference between the movie and the actual history. But my point is then, fast forward from 1925 to 2005, 20 years ago. If you watch the movie Inherit the Wind, it's a fictionalized account, and Spencer Tracy, of course, does a great job of playing the character that is Clarence Darrow, who was the defending attorney for the Scopes guy teaching evolution, and he cross-examined William Jennings Bryan, who was the prosecutor. And here's what he said. And he made the case not so much about evolution, whether it was true or not. The case that he made isn't a bad one in one sense, in that he made the case that free speech was in question here. And so he said to William Jennings Bryan, what if sometime in the future there was a law passed that disallowed the Bible or creation to be taught in the public schools? What about then? In other words, if you violate the free speech of teaching Darwin's theory, what about, you could also, if you're going to start disregarding free speech, you're going to also you could also disregard teaching the Bible. Well, in 2005, That's what happened. There was another court case in Dover, Pennsylvania area where the school board mandated, now think about this, the school board mandated what I thought was a great idea. I still do. Teach them both. Put Darwinian evolution and let them make their case the very best they can. Use the textbooks, call in scientists, help them make the case, and then make the case, have others make the case for intelligent design. Intelligent design, aka creation. I know they try to, we're not talking about creation, we're talking about intelligent design here. Well, it's just another way to say if you have an intelligent designer, you have a creator. And so, but my point is this, if you put them side by side, which I have done in my own, I've done a whole lot of study about both of these ideas. And when you put them side by side, I think intelligent design wins hands down. If you have a neutral audience that you're given to, and from kids going forward, they just intuitively know that the universe is here for a purpose. Everything has a purpose. There's a reason for us being here. But not on Darwinian evolution. We're here totally by chance. There's no reason or purpose for us to be able to make it up as we go along. So all that I'm saying is that the idea is free speech. Now, I've gotten so many hateful comments, and I'm thinking, how is it that these people who seem to be so scientifically minded, some of them even in their email address or their Facebook page, they have science, some Mr. Science guy or something like that. And how can they be so hateful about this? Can't they just, and they never give any actual evidence one way or the other. They just say, you're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid. Well, I may be, but that doesn't mean the case is. And so my point is, can't we just talk about this? I think, again, I go back to the Dover case, and of course in that case in Pennsylvania in 2005, the creationists lost. And they had the goods, is my point, is they had the goods. The Dover, Pennsylvania school board recommended a particular book that endorsed intelligent design and just say, let's put them side by side, let the students decide, but make the case both ways and see what happens. They weren't willing to do that. They wanted to close down, and so now it's against the law to teach creationism, intelligent design, in public schools. Well, we can still teach the fine-tuning of the universe because that's science. It's settled science. We can still teach that the universe had an absolute beginning from nothing, and that's settled science as well. We can still teach that without all of these complex parameters, life itself could not exist, and it seems like the Earth is the only planet in the universe that we know anything about that has the conditions necessary for life, and therefore life itself. Those are scientific facts, and that's my point. In the last 100 years, God has poured on the scientific facts, and we still haven't gotten into, and we haven't yet, and I won't today, the whole idea of the information needed for life to exist on Earth or anywhere else. The information is in the DNA. It's in the sequences of the DNA, ACTG or ATCG. It's a language, and atheist scientists call it the language, the book of life. It's an information source. Well, you don't get information outside of intelligence. We've never had an experience where intelligence comes from non-intelligence. And so why would it not be scientific to say there's probably a God? Well, no, that's religion, that's theology, that's not science. Why not? So that's my point. That's the reason for all of these things. So here we go. And I hope you will watch the rest of these. This is not a long one, but I hope you'll watch the rest of them. Thanks.